to second semester MA English Literature class. In this class, we are going on to look the paper British Literature 20th Century up to 1940s. So, before moving to the paper, let's have a brief into this paper. So, this paper contains 3 sections. Section A deals with poetry beginning from G.M. Hopkins and ending with Wilfred Owen. Section B begins with a play by G.B. Shaw and ends with Sean O'Casey. Section C deals with prose and fiction. So, 1 essay and 3 novels has been dealt in section C. So, this paper contains all these sections. So, we ask you to supplement this paper with extra readings because this class contains only main points. So, you could supplement with extra readings. So, we shall move to the poem The Wind Hover by G.M. Hopkins. So, G.M. Hopkins is an English poet and Jesuit priest of the Victorian period. He is one of the most important writers of the Victorian era. Hopkins wrote The Wind Hover in 1877. It was published in 1918, almost 30 years after his death. Hopkins died in the year 1889. So some of his major works include The Wreck of the Deutschland, The Wind Hover, etc. So moving to the poem, The Wind Hover. Throughout the choice of words and usages, Hopkins paints a very lively picture of the flight of the falcon in the poem. The wind hover is a bird that soars high up and encircles and glides to catch its prey like kite, hawk or falcon. So it may be taken as a symbol of the soul, spirit, or it may be the symbol of Jesus Christ, to whom the poem is dedicated to. The poet, being a depressed man, turned to spirituality and turned to Christ for solace. His last words, let me quote, I'm happy, I loved my life, tells his psyche. He uses simple imagery with metaphysical overtones, with delicate but intricate prosody. He used archaic and dialect words or even coined words. One example of such word is dwindles from twines and dwindles. Hopkins extensively uses alliteration, assonance, onomatopoeic words and both end and internal rhyme. So, in the framework of a sonnet of octave and sestet pattern with sprung rhythm, he symbolically connects this world and the other world. The Wind Hover, like William Blake's The Tiger, is a poem about the creature and the creator. Both the creatures combine beauty and fear and reflect the loving, more dangerous nature of God. So this poem is actually written in the form of a sonnet, a very short poem to be understood. So, what the poet means or meant in this poem is to distinguish between this world and the other through the beautiful image of a falcon or a beautiful image of a bird. So I hope you understood this class. We are moving to the next poem in this section. So the poem is by W.B. Yeats. So we do have two poems by W.B. Yeats. So let me introduce or discuss the first poem. So before moving to the poem, let me start with a short biography of the poet. William Butler Yeats was born in Dublin in 1865. Here, Yeats' modernism that is highly tinged with aspects of romanticism. In 1899, Yeats, along with George Moore, Edward Martyn and Lady Augusta Gregory founded the Irish Theatrical Society, which later became the Abbey Theatre. In 1925, he published A Vision. The Tower was published in 1928. The Winding Stair was published in 1933. In 1924, Yeats was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. Although Yeats is more famous as a poet, he also deals deeply into all other literary genres. For example, his work of fictions, The Celtic, Twilight, a non-fiction, The 4 Years. Then coming to his plays, The Countess Kathleen, The Hourglass, The Land of Heart's Desire. His short stories include Singe and the Island of His Time, Out of the Rose, The Heart of the Spring, etc. Coming to poetry, A Prayer for My Daughter, Broken Dreams, Easter 1916, No Second Troy, Sailing to Bisantium. So coming to our poem, The Second Coming. In this poem, the speaker describes a nightmarish scene. The falcon, turning in a widening gyre, cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. So it is a very beautiful and famous phrase, that is, things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Yes, all those activities that has been taking place in this modern or postmodern era that is making the center as if it cannot hold no more. So let me quote another line from the poem, that is, the ceremony of innocence is drowned. So here, ceremony is considered as a mere, let me repeat, the innocence is considered as a mere ceremony. So it is, innocence is something innate to human characteristics or human nature, but here it is considered as a ceremony which is no longer in prominence, it is drowned. So Yeats begins the poem with the image of a falcon wheeling about in the sky far away from the falconer who released it. The bird continues to wheel further and further away from the falconer. So this metaphor stands for the young people of Ireland who have given up the standards of their age-old traditions. So the first part of the poem also illustrates by reference not only to the contemporary events but also to Yeats' fundamental beliefs. So the fusion of mythology and history can be seen here. Things fall apart. The present civilization is disintegrating. So that's what's happening in this present times. So this is very clear from the sentence, things fall apart. In the first stanza of the poem, Yeats gives us the first bird metaphor. In the second part, he gives us the second bird metaphor, so in the form of an indignant desert bird. So at the beginning of the second stanza, Yeats call for a revelation, saying, so let me quote, "Surely a revelation is at hand," unquote. In terms of the Christian myth, the poem prophesies the arrival of God. The falcon, the darkness, and the blood accentuate the horror that is closing upon mankind. So the contemporary scene will be followed soon by another, that is, the rough, let me quote, "The rough beast slouching towards Bethlehem is a symbol of this new age." So the speaker's vision of the rising Sphinx is the vision of the new world. So in this poem, what does the poet mean is to distinguish between the new era, old era and the new era, the differences that has taken place. So the new people, new generation of people who have abandoned the age-old traditions, customs, rituals, and moving towards what is new, what we could say in this contemporary times, the new gen philosophies, the new gen traditions, that all those things. So that's been what is said in this poem. I hope you all understood this poem. We are moving to the next poem, that is by W.B. Yeats. So in the previous class, I had already mentioned the biographical details of Yeats. So you can refer to that class. Now I'm not repeating it. So moving straight to the poem. The poem Bisantium by Yeats describes what happens at night in the city of Bisantium through the first-person perspective. As the night emerges in the city of Bisantium, the day's activities recede. So the drunken soldier of the emperor are asleep, and the song of night walkers too fades along with the other night sounds. The great cathedral gone. So the starlit doom disdains everything that is human, for human life is mere complexities filled with fury and the mere of human veins. So here something has been described, that is the differentiation. He differentiates between human life and that of art. So as he observes the scene around him, the speaker sees an image floating in front of him. The speaker addresses the spirit as, let me continue, as supernatural, for it reflects the ultimate truth of death. So let me quote, "In life and life, in death." So unquote. The poet follows the floating image to find a golden bird perching on a golden tree. Yes, let me quote, "Like a miracle, it calls and scorns the birds of mire and blood," unquote. At midnight, the images float through the flames across the emperor's pavement. The fire seems to be self-generated and self-fed, for it was fed by either woods or steel. Even the storm has no effect so on it. Even the storm has no effect on it. Here, so let me quote, blood begotten spirits come and dance, unquote, in a trance and uh, be cleared of all earthly impurities. So finally, spirit after spirit arrives at the sea shore to be carried across the sea on the backs of dolphin. So the golden smithies of the emperor ensures the perfection of the end process, while the flames ensures the speckles cleansing of the spirit on land. So here I have already mentioned a distinction is made between this mortal life and the immortality of art. So the major themes of Bisantium can be human imperfection versus perfectness of art, terrestrial life versus spiritual or afterlife. So the poet metaphorically presents human life as nothing and momentous, while the man-made arts remain so forever. So this is about art, how art can be seen as the work of human hands, which is immortal. So this life on earth is seen as mortal because people die according to time as time passes. So this is what is described in this poem. So I hope you understood. We are moving to the next poem, that is The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. So The Wasteland is considered the most very important poems of the 20th century. Even in this century, the 21st century, it is considered the very most important one. So coming to the biography of Eliot, T.S. Eliot, known as Thomas Stone Eliot, the greatest modern English poet, was an American by birth and an Englishman by adoption. He came to possess many-sided personality. He was a classicist, an innovator, a critic, a social reformer, and a mythic, all combined into one. In 1917 to 1919, he was the assistant editor of The Egoist, and that in that period or the years following this, he started writing poetry. He supported himself by writing in magazines and periodicals. Eventually, he became the director of Faber and Faber. He became the editor of the Criterion at its beginning in 1922. The British Order of Merit and the Nobel Prize for Literature were awarded to him in 1948. Eliot died in London in the year 1965. The Wasteland was published in 1922. The year 1922 has been known as the Annus Mirabilis, or the Miracle Year of Anglo-American literary modernism, chiefly because of the simultaneous publication of Eliot's The Wasteland, James Joyce's Ulysses, and Virginia Woolf's Jacob's Row. The poem, coming to our poem, The Wasteland, the poem is divided into 5 sections entitled Section 1, The Burial of the Dead. So, Section 2, The Game of Chess. Section 3, Fire Sermon. Section 4, Death by Water. And the last section, Section 5, What the Thunder Said. So, in the first section, The Burial of the Dead, the condition is presented through 5 scenes. The theme is stated in the first opening lines. The comment on let me repeat. The comment on the cruelty of springtime, the pain of new life stirring after the terror of winter, and we pass to a reminiscence of summer coming with a shower of rain and then sunlight and an hour of casual talk. So, casual talks in the Hofgott Garden in Munich. In the second section, we pass through Ezekiel's valley of dry bones and witness frustration in love in the episodes from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde and Hyacinth Garden. Then we are introduced to Madame Sosostris, the famous fortune teller. Now we step into London winter. We see a crowd of people crossing London Bridge. They are slaves of time, each with his eyes fixed before his feet, watching the next step only. So the poet recognizes one figure, Stetson, and then there is a Again, let me please make it a point. The poet recognizes one figure, Stetson, and then there is a conversation between them. From the reference of London, one may think that the civilization referred to is a modern one, but the presence of Stetson, who was the protagonist in the, let me quote, ships at Miley, unquote, makes this passage visionary and timeless. The theme of A Game of Chess is the sterility and meaninglessness of life without love. So, the wasteland, which has been presented through the portrayal of two types of modern women in different social present the contrast between the life in a rich and magnificent setting and life in the low and vulgar setting of London pub. In these portrayals of women, we notice that sexual passion without the soothing power of ecstatic love is the cause of suffering and tragedy. The objective correlative for this second section is taken from Middleton's Tragedy Women Beware Women. The theme of the Fire Sermon is passion and sensuousness of human nature that are the main sources of misery and suffering in this world, and Eliot finds a suitable objective correlative in the Lord Buddha's Fire Sermon. Lord Buddha tells us that passion is the source of suffering, evil in this world, and a person can get nirvana if he wins over passion. So Eliot has combined the doctrines of Lord Buddha and Saint Augustine in this section. In the third section, the possibility of purification of the soul lay in the release from the burning flames of lust through asceticism of Lord Buddha and Saint Augustine. This section also describes the possibility of becoming free from the fire of passion not by self-discipline but by water which washes away all the stains of the body as well the soul. The final section, what the thunder said, in this section, the protagonist turns from the water that drowns in the last section to the water that saves. He attempts to achieve peace by coming under the shadow of religion, but even religion falls him as the commands of the thunder are violated in the wasteland. The quest for salvation and inner peace have been expressed through three objective correlatives: the journey to Emmaus, the approach of the chapel perilous, and the present decay of Eastern Europe. So, these three themes are illustrations of one single theme: the falling down of the temporal world and the promise of a revival or a promise of a new world. So that's all about this poem. I hope you all understood this. We are moving to the next poem, that is Funeral Blues by W.H. Auden. So a short biography of Auden. Winston Hugh Oden was born in York in the United Kingdom. So some of his poems focus on social ills as well as the workings of the mind. So in his last years, he composed some major works there: The City Without Walls, Epistle to a Godson, and Thank You Fog. So another poem which he is remembered for is The Unknown Citizen. So we are moving to the poem Funeral Blues. So the poem Funeral Blues is otherwise known as Stop All the Clocks. So the poem is divided into four stanzas. The first two stanzas see the where one could see the speaker who is mourning the loss of a close friend or a lover, making a series of requests or commands. So in the first stanza, he asks that the clocks be stopped, the telephone be cut off so it cannot ring, and the dog be kept quiet without a barn go, and the music of the pianos be discontinued. Instead, let the muffled drum accompanying the coffin as it is brought out and the mourners at the funeral arrive. So the requests the speaker makes are paving the way for the funeral after all. So in the second stanza, the speaker is requesting something different. However, he moves from a private or a closed request to a more public display of grief, but this is faintly observed. He asks that the planes circling in the sky, that the message he is dead be scribbled across the sky. So he wants the grape boughs to be around the necks of the doves. So the way he does mean pigeons suggests that the speaker's grief is overwhelming and that he wants the whole world to mourn with him. The bows around the necks of the doves and the black cotton and glove, where black is always associated with mourning, that he wants the traffic policemen to wear both excessive and unreasonable requests to make. So all these things are said precisely in this poem, and it often becomes inconceivable that everyone else would not share in the feeling of loss and sorrow the individual feels. So indeed, as the third stanza makes clear, the man who has died was everything to the speaker, no matter where he is, which day he died, or which time he died. So the this suggests that the speaker is telling about more than a friend and is lamenting the loss of a lover. It may be considered as a friend, either a friend or a lover. So of course, the poem is an elegy. So we all know that an elegy is written to mourn the death of a friend, a lover, or an intimate person. So one of the famous elegies are the elegy written on a country churchyard by Thomas Gray. So in that poem, he laments those deaths that have occurred in spiritual life. Here, Auden is speaking about the death of a loved one. So the speaker thought his lover would always be around him. So it is said in three simple words. The final stanza then takes a number of romantic tropes typically associated with poetry: the stars, the moon, the sun, and the oceans. So the speaker is saying that the world indeed, or the entire universe, is of no worth if it does not have a lover in it. So very beautiful lines have been spoken in the last part of the poem. Beautiful in the sense because the lament of the poet or the speaker or the grief of the speaker is very well expressed through those lines. He's saying or he's speaking that if there is no dear and near one in this world or this universe is of no use. So with these lines, the poet concludes the poem. So this is all about this poem. I hope you understood this. We are moving to the last poem in section A. The poem is Strange Meeting by Wilfred Owen. So a short biography of Wilfred Owen. He was born in the year 1893. He joined the 2nd Battalion of the Manchester Regiment and went to Somme battlefront. He got his first experience of modern trench warfare during the First World War. He was wounded in the war front and was hospitalized in Edinburgh. So the poem which we are studying, The Strange Meeting, is considered to be Owen's masterpiece, and it is an unfinished poem probably written at the Scarborough where Owen was posted after his discharge from Craiglockhart War Hospital in October 1917. So coming to our poem, the poem Strange Meeting is told from the point of view of a narrator who attempts to escape the death and thumping guns by going down into the trenches. Once there, however, he finds that he has descended into hell, where he is confronted with a man he himself has killed. Unlike the hatred and violence exploding above ground, this underground encounter between the two soldiers from opposing armies and nations is infused with an elegiac sense of reconciliation and regret. There, in the silence of the trench or underworld, the soldier and the stranger can reflect on the larger meaning of the war and the toil it is taking on the young men of Europe. So this is the overall view of the poem. So coming to the short summary of this poem, the title of the poem refers to an imaginary meeting in hell between two soldiers belonging to opposite camps. The narrator happens to meet after his death one the enemy soldiers he has killed. He realizes that both of them have been victims of the monstrous war and thus becomes friends with each other while enemies. The German soldier, in fact, wanted to convey to this world the pity of war, which is the untold truth about war. In the absence of his message, men would continue to shed blood and kill people in battlefields. The most noteworthy aspect of Owen's war poetry is his preoccupation with what he calls, quote, the pity of war. The title of the poem echoes a line from a poem by Shelley, who, along with Keats, was a major literary influence at last in the early part of Owen's poetry. Shelley's The Revolt of Islam contains the line, "Gone for this whom no strange meeting did befall." So that's all about this poem. So here in this class as well as in the previous class, I have been discussing two poems which are related to war. In the last poem, that is The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, he was talking about the monstrous world wars or the monstrous First World War. Here, Wilfred Owen is also talking about war. So here, what problems or what atrocities are brought up by war has been detailed or described in both of these poems. So talking about the title of the poem, The Wasteland, in the previous class. So what do you think when you hear the title, The Wasteland? So this land is gifted or given to us by God the Almighty. That's what we believe from time immemorial. And this land is given to us in order to cultivate, to rear cattle, to do our affairs, to get progression, all those things. Instead of all those things, people here being jealous, being over enthusiastic and being cruel, they make this land a wasteland by shedding blood, by killing each other. So in the poem The Wasteland, we could see corpse or dead bodies here and there. The wind brings the smell of blood stains. That's what is seen in the poem. That's why the title, the apt title, The Wasteland. So here in this poem, the strange meeting, here the poet is very beautifully, he describes a meeting in hell, between the meeting of two soldiers in hell. So what does take place? Their conversations, their meetings, all those things are described in the poem. So the monstrous war has killed those two soldiers and now they are in hell. So the title is so prominent in both of these poems. So I hope you understood this poem. Thank you all.